Our gospel reading this morning comes to us from Mark chapter 16, verses 1 through 8. Hear now the word of the Lord. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of James and Salome bought spices so that they might go and anoint Jesus. And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. They had been saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb?" When they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled back. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. But he said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He is not here. Look, there is the place they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him just as he told you." So they went out and fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them. And they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. This is the word of the Lord. In the Gospel of Mark, the Easter story ends abruptly, before reaching a more satisfying conclusion, something a little bit more like a happily ever after. It ends so suddenly, in fact, that later followers added an ending more like the ending of the other three Gospels, but the most ancient sources end here with what is called the shorter ending. I like the shorter ending, unsatisfying as it is. I like that it leaves you asking, but then what happened? Mark doesn't tell us what happened to Mary Magdalene, or what happened to Mary, the mother of James, or what happened to Salome, and he doesn't tell us what happened to Peter or the other disciples. But Mark does tell us what happened to Jesus. He was crucified, but has been raised from the dead. He's not here in the tomb. He has gone ahead of you, and you will see him again just as he told you. It's not the most satisfying conclusion, but it leaves us room to imagine the reunion for ourselves and imagine what our own reunion with Jesus might look like. We have a Bible full of stories dating back thousands of years, but the heart of our faith is in the present moment. The heart of our faith is what we are doing right now. The heart of our faith isn't so much about what we believe as it is about how we live our lives because of what we believe. Jesus has been raised from the dead. That's a fact so much bigger than any one person's story. Many things in this life pale in comparison to the enormity of God's love for us and for creation. A love that filled the world with beautiful flowers and sunrises. A love that hung stars in the heavens. A love that called all life into being with only the power of God's breath. A love that made us in God's own image. A love that gave God's only Son to the world. A love that raised that Son from the dead. A love that waits to raise us too and sweep us up into the embrace of the everlasting arms of God. My cords keep adjusting my computer. Rude. The shorter ending of Mark fades out with a command. Go and tell the others that Jesus has gone on ahead of you. The Bible that we usually read from, the New Revised Standard Version, or NRSV, paints the women as being seized by terror and amazement. In the Greek, the phrase doesn't quite translate neatly, but it's something like, they held astonishment. The word there is ecstasis, the root of our English word ecstasy. everything that they thought they had known about the world they lived in and had just been turned upside down. I imagine they were stunned and awed and a little overwhelmed and a little bit joyful, but also a little bit afraid, because they knew that nothing was ever going to be the same, and they didn't know what that meant for the lives that they lived. We are told that they said nothing to anyone, at least not in that moment. We know that they did share the story, or else it would never have reached us. But still, I like to think that the shorter ending of Mark invites us not just to imagine what happened next, but to live it ourselves. The command to go tell the others is a command for us too. To tell the world, not just with our words, but with our lives, that there is something big in this universe, something that matters, something that is so full to bursting with love that being near it means we can't help but radiate that love ourselves. Yes, the shorter ending of the story seems a little disappointing, because we want loud shouting of Alleluia, and we want to watch Jerusalem welcome Jesus back and realize that they were wrong to condemn him. We want to be there as everyone hugs each other and shares in a great big joyful feast. We want all of the characters to come back for a curtain call. We want to see the children that Jesus welcomed now grown to awkward teenagers. We want to see the people that Jesus healed and fed and helped. We want to see them passing on the news too, the news that Jesus is no longer in the tomb because he has been raised. We want to see the disciples happy again. We want to wipe away Mary's tears. We don't get to read that kind of satisfying, heartwarming ending, at least not as Mark tells the story. But at the end of the day, that doesn't matter, because no matter what, Christ has risen, even without choirs or flowers or big celebrations. Christ has risen, even though the disciples are afraid. Christ has risen, even though it seems impossible. And Christ still rises, even today, even though we are apart, even though no matter what we do to celebrate Easter this year, will ultimately fall just a little bit flat. Christ still rises and has gone on ahead. And what happens next is that we tell the story and we believe and we love each other and we follow. Christ still rises again and again, and the sun still rises again and again, and we keep on going and we still proclaim his resurrection and will until he comes again.